Thanks, Yvonne, and thanks, Blair, for being here with us today. So I'd like to ask you some questions about CASA's experience in applying for a high impact grant. So right off the bat, we have a lot of agencies that say, I've applied so many times, what's the secret? So how many times did CASA apply, and what did you learn from each attempt?
So I've been here at CASA since 2019, and I came in the summer, and they had already put in an application for impact, of course, that year. And one of the first phone calls that I actually had to field in my new role was from the technical review committee. And I realized that we had put in an application for funding for a project that would actually already be finished before the award date, which of course is a big no-no. So be very careful in that from the very beginning, from the start of the technical review and the project that you choose, that you're really looking at every single box and checking off all of those important things, because that was a hard one to kind of come in and be like, oh man, we could have done a different project and perhaps gotten further, but to be disqualified that early in the stage of the project is a little hard. But so when we went around the next year, we made it to the site visit. We got past all of the technical review, and I think that is one of the biggest things. You probably are going to apply multiple years before you really get a sense of exactly what impact is looking for, and realize exactly what each question is looking for and asking, and that's okay. And I think you need to just look at each attempt as a learning opportunity, and what can you learn from that and take so that next year your application is stronger than before. So we made it to the site visit, but we had a CEO turnover right in the middle of the application process, and so that made it challenging for us to go into this project that our CEO had visioned out with us to begin with. And then when the site visit came around, she wasn't there to help present that. And so again, did the best we could. We put it all out there. And I think we had a good presentation, but still it was an interesting challenge. And then this third time is when we got all the way through. And I think one of the things that we also learned is that you really have to approach each stage of the application process as almost a separate and independent event, while you stay really solid and really clear in your project and the bones of your you kind of have to take a little bit of a different approach to each stage, because one is, of course, very technical, and one is more personal with the site visit, and everybody is there in the room with you. And then the video is a whole different ball game of trying to get the same messaging across in that different format. But I think the biggest point is always to go back to the bones of your project. If that is solid, then regardless of what the formatting is that you're presenting your project, then you have that opportunity to elaborate on it and add more to it. But just stay really, really solid and strong in the bones and the base of the project.
So let's talk a little bit more about that project. So how did you approach picking this specific project last year?
So our project was to build out an existing warehouse space into a boutique space. CASA works with children who are in the foster care system, and our advocates, who are volunteers, have the opportunity to work directly with the children and give them a lot of opportunities that they might not otherwise have. And so for us, the core of our project was, the project itself was the space, but the true core of it was that children who are in foster care don't have a lot of choices. And when you can give a child who doesn't have many choices the opportunity to make a decision, you're giving them a little bit of their power back, and you're giving them the opportunity to feel empowered and stronger in themselves. And that really can help them lifelong. They often don't have the opportunity to make choices. So if we can give them that chance in a safe space and an environment that it's safe to fail, it's safe to make a mistake, and we can catch them, then we can really help them lifelong. And as they age out of the system, they already have that practice under their belt. So for us, when we thought about that project, the reason that we chose it was for a couple of reasons. We wanted a turnkey project. We wanted something that could be done within that $100,000 entirely. And part of that, honestly, was just to make it simpler on ourselves. Because if your whole project is within that $100,000, you don't have to worry about having to field questions about, well, what if this other funding that you are relying on doesn't come through? It's done. And I do think that makes it a little easier. We also, because we had this specific tangible project, there was a very clear outcome. We get the money, we build the space, like very clear outcome that we're able to show that. And then what the less tangible outcome of really working with the children and seeing those changes over the children, we could really lean into narratively to show the greater impact that this isn't just a store. It's not just, a place for us to store some, toiletries and stuff and such. We have that already. We have a warehouse space, but we wanted it to be a special space for these kids, because that is so valuable to children in these circumstances. And so really emphasizing that the tangible outcome as well as the not as tangible outcome for the children. So in this boutique, we really felt like we had a strong project, a clear outcome measure in the build out, and then that less tangible, but no less important outcome of teaching an important life skill to children and youth who may not have another opportunity to learn that skill.
So were there any other things about the budget that you contemplated as you chose your project and described it?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing was that this was going to be able to be fully funded through that $100,000. And so it's just so much easier to work with a budget that's going to be fully funded by Impact. That there's just no question about other funding falling through. There's just, you just don't have to worry about those things. So
yeah. So you talked a little bit about each stage and the site visit. Let's talk about the video. Had you worked on the video before you were chosen as a finalist?
We had not. We had B-roll already, of course. And we had a videographer that we've worked with in the past, to the same one who had done the B-roll when we did our bigger About Us video. And so we were able to call him and honestly, I'll tell you, like, it was really funny in our building, because our CEO, Angie White, the whole time we were waiting for this, she was like, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. We're going to get it. And the minute we got the site visit, like, her whole attitude went from, oh, I'm so nervous about this. And myself and one of our other employees were the ones who were going, it's okay. We're going to get it. We're going to get it. But because of that, it was almost like, well, we weren't going to move forward as quick, like ahead of the timeline. But we called our videographer. We were able to get him scheduled on a Sunday, actually, to come in and film the video. And the reason that we did that is because we wanted it filmed as quickly as possible, so that we had the majority of the time left to focus on the editing process. I think we had a really strong view of what this project was and the reasons behind it and all of that. And so we wanted to make sure that in the editing that we were able to really hone that down and I mean, that's where the magic happens. They always say that in films, that the magic happens on the cutting room floor, right? Where you are getting rid of all the fluff and you're really focusing in on what are the bare bones of the project. And so I would 100% advise you to give yourself enough time to really look at your video line by line, like moment by moment. And ask, like, did that line say what we needed it to say? Did that push the talking points forward? Was this story stronger or was that story stronger? Because do we need both of them? Or is one enough? And I think as you continue to do that, you tighten it up and tighten it up. And it does, I've heard people say with editing that it feels like you're, cutting bits off your baby, which is a horrible, horrible thing to say, but you know what I mean. But it does feel like that because you're proud of it, but it makes it so much stronger at the end of the day, to not have as much in the video sometimes. And then as we got through that first draft and the first editing process, we sent it to a couple of really trusted supporters, including a board member, and asked them very specific questions like, as you watch this, do you understand the project? What stood out for you? Do you understand the deeper impact of the project? And so then we took all that into account to do a second round of editing, and really get in there even further.
That's actually great advice for the project application and the site visit. We always
That's true.
To get somebody that's not down in the details to take a look and see whether does the project application make sense? Is the presentation we've got for site visit, does that, those are the things.
Yeah.
We really
I think often we get so into the weeds of it that we know what we're talking about, but we don't realize that other people might not, or that it might not be clear. And so I think for clarity's sake, it is really important to find that trusted person who maybe isn't going to like line edit you necessarily, but to give you that overall feedback on, does it make sense? Is it clear?
Right. Well, thanks, Blair, so much for coming and sharing with us this morning. I know you're going to hang around with us for Q&A. So if any of you have questions for Blair, you can feel free to put those in the chat.
I would like to share one more thing about our video, if you don't mind. The other thing about it is that y'all kind of touched on earlier about who is the right person to present. So Angie is amazing and she's very dynamic, and especially in person, she's extremely dynamic. Sometimes on video, if she's by herself in a video, she can kind of fall flat. And we know this. So when we were looking at our video and how she was going to present this, we were like, well, we need somebody else for her to talk with, to be in the video with her. So we changed our video from just her kind of saying scripted talking points to a conversation with one of our advocates who is also very passionate and had experience working with a child in this. And so we didn't actually script our video at all. We just asked them questions and had them answer, and it ended up feeling really organic and really, I thought, warm and inviting for the viewer.
Okay, great. That's great advice. So Elizabeth, I'll turn it back over to you to wrap us up, and then we'll do some Q&A.